In today's video, we're going to break down how much money you make over your first 4 years when you join the Air Force as an E2. Now, if you're joining the Air Force as an E1 or an E3, I have separate videos that dive into those details, so click the video that is specific to your situation. Now, I know a lot of people consider signing a 6-year contract because of the early promotions, and a lot of people probably want to know how much money does that actually equate to. So in this video, I'm going to be comparing if you sign a 4-year contract versus a 6-year contract, so you can see the actual monetary difference between the two. Just a heads up though, I am using the 2025 pay chart because that's what year it is right now as I'm shooting this. And I've also accounted for the average pay increase over the last 10 years, which comes out to 2.6%. But if you're new here, my name is Kyle Gott. I'm a 6-year Air Force veteran who did aircraft structural maintenance, and I'm also the founder of Airman Vision. Here at Airman Vision, we've created a streamlined solution for modern day Air Force recruiting where we're bridging the gap between future recruits and the Air Force. So if you're new, consider subscribing and also liking this video to help others find it. Now, in this video, I am only factoring in base pay. I am not factoring in other pays such as family separation, BAH, or BAS. The reason being is those situations can vary, and so certain people will get it, others won't. And at the end of the day, most of it just cancels out anyways, because if you get BAH, you're going to turn around and spend that on a house. And if you're not getting BAH, it's because the military is providing you free housing. Also, with food allowance, if you're getting free food, they don't give you BAS. And if you're getting BAS, you're going to turn around and spend that on food. I do have a separate video that breaks down how all of the pay works, but I just didn't include it here because there are so many different factors and variations for every single person, but base pay is the same for everybody across the board. Now, in this video, I am only referencing somebody that goes to technical training for 4 months. Now, if your technical training is shorter than that, typically 3 months, most people are not going to have a 2-month long technical training. The difference is going to be about $134, and it works the same way the other way. If you have a 5-month technical training or even longer, it's still only going to equate to about $134 difference there. Overall, this video is to give you just a general idea. It's not going to be exact to the penny, but it will be very accurate as far as a generalized experience of what you can expect. And also, if you want to see a specific breakdown on how promotions work, whether you sign a 4 or 6-year contract and how long your technical training is, I have a separate video that deep dives into that information. Now, because I did use the 2025 pay charts to start this initial calculation, and then for every year pay raise, I factored in the 2.6% pay raise. But for future reference, if you're watching this in say 2028, hi people of the future, you're going to want to calculate this a little bit differently than what I have in this video. Now, I wouldn't expect you to go through and calculate every single month to figure that out, but if you just want to see what the 4-year total pay comes out to be, there's an easy equation that you can use to figure this out in the future. So you're going to want to take 1.026 to the power of whatever year it is right now while you're watching and subtract 2025 from it. And then you're going to multiply that number by the total 4-year total to give you your expected 4-year total for what you would experience. But before we jump into the charts, I do want to mention that at the end of this video, I'm going to be talking about how this year I've actually made less money than my first year in the Air Force. But this is also the second most I've ever traveled in a single year, and I've been able to maintain financial stability. It all ties back to how I used my pay and my time in the military to set a really strong financial foundation, and this is the information that I talk about in my book, Build Wealth in the Military. So if you've ever wondered how to turn your military pay into financial freedom, then you're definitely going to want to stick around to the end of the video. All right, now let's jump into the fun stuff, the charts. I'm kind of a stat nerd. That's why I like making these videos. I like creating this information because I just find it interesting, and I think most of you probably appreciate this. If you do, be sure to like the video so I know to make more content similar to this. All right, as I've already said, this video is specifically for those of you that are joining the Air Force as an E2. If you're joining as an E1 or an E3, I have a separate video for you guys. Check the video out that is representative of what your experience is going to be. But if you're joining as an E2, then you are definitely in the right place. And let's jump into this chart. So at the top, I have somebody signing a 4-year contract right here, somebody that signs a 6-year contract right here. This column is going to be the difference in pay between the two. And then over here, I have the month. So just for simplicity, I went ahead and just said, you're joining in January. Even though people go to basic training every single month out of the year, I wasn't going to make a video 12 times, giving this scenario, 12 different ways. So I just picked January because it's the first month of the year, and we're going to roll with it. All right. So here we have, you go to basic training in January, you join 4-year contract, 6-year contract. Say you got Airman A and Airman B, right? They're going to join the exact same day. They go to basic training the same day, but Airman A is like, I signed a 4-year contract, and Airman B is like, I signed a 6-year contract, right? Same experience, same day. They're going to basic training. So day one, they are going to be making the same amount of money because they're both going to be an E2. So they're actually going to be making the same amount of money for the first several months, but the person that signed a 6-year contract is going to be the one to get the first promotion and the first pay raise. Now, as I already stated earlier in the video, I am only factoring in if you have a 4-month-long technical training. If you have a 5-month or more, it's just going to be a difference of 1 month right here. This is where you would get promoted. And if you are having a 3-month technical training, most people are not going to have 2 months. So if you have 3 months, your early promotion is going to happen right here. So you would just add $134 right here. And if you have the longer technical training, you would just not count this one. So that's really the only difference here. And that's why I went with 4, because it's kind of right in the middle, the perfect spot to do this scenario. So if you have 2 months of basic training, 4 months of technical training, these people will both be graduating technical training at their 6-month mark. However, the 6-year enlistee gets that early promotion benefit of getting promoted to E3 upon completion of technical training. And this is one of the big factors of why people join with the 6-year contract. They say it's because they want the early promotion, they want to make more money, they want to rank up faster. And that is exactly what happens right here. So here you're going to be going from $2,599 a month to $2,733. Now remember, this is only base pay, and this is before taxes or any deductions are taken out. This does not include BAH, BAS, or any other type of pay that you might be getting. So when it comes to the difference in pay between Airman A and Airman B is going to be making $134 more a month until Airman A gets promoted to E3, and they then become the same rank. This will happen at the 10-month mark when the 4-year enlistee is promoted to E3, and therefore they will be the same rank and have the same time in service, so they will be getting paid the same amount of money. Therefore, there is no more monthly difference between the two pays. Now, these blue highlighted marks are actually going to be the yearly congressional pay raises that Congress votes on in the spending bill. So typically the military gets anywhere from like 1% to 4% pay raises. It averages out over the last 10 years to 2.6%. Now, this will happen at different points in people's careers, right? I just said that for this scenario, you're joining in January. However, if you would have joined in July, then you would have had July, August, September, October, November, December, January. So 6 months in would have been where your January 1st pay raise kicked in. So this is a yearly pay raise that happens on January 1st. This happens across the board. This happens for every single military member. Doesn't matter what month you joined in, everybody gets that pay raise January 1st. Again, that can fluctuate. Some years it can be as much as 4%. Some years it can be as low as 1%. This scenario just went ahead and said they joined in January. So their 1-year mark and 2-year mark, 3-year mark coincides with January 1st. So in this scenario, they're going to be getting that pay raise every single year on their year mark. So 2.6% increase of $2,733 is $2,804. This is going to happen for both people. So there is still no pay difference. The next big jump that we are going to see is actually going to be again for that next yearly congressional pay raise. And in this scenario, that's going to be at their 2-year mark. However, if you had joined in July, your 6-month mark, and then your 1.5-month mark would have been where your second January pay raise kicked in. So the blue ones will shift, but the gray will stay the same no matter what month you join, right? You could join in July, this person would still promote at their 10-month mark. So that's the easy way to explain that, is the blue can slide kind of like a dial depending on when you join, but the blue will always be paired up with January. So at that 2-year mark, we are going to get that yearly pay raise, and that is going to be another 2.6% pay raise that I just factored in. Again, average over 10 years, and that goes from $2,804 to $3,058. Again, this does not factor in BAS or BAH, and they are going to still be the same rank, so they will be getting the same amount of pay. The next pay jump that you will see is going to be for the 6-year enlistee, and that will be at the 30-month mark. And that is when the 6-year enlistee is going to get that early promotion. Again, why most people join the 6-year enlistment, they get promoted earlier. So they're getting it at 30 months. They get promoted to E4. So they are going to go from $3,058 to $3,350. That comes out to a 292 pay difference from the person that signed a 4-year contract. That is going to be like that for a total of 6 months until the 4-year enlistee gets promoted to E4, and then they are there for the same rank again. This right here just happens to coincide right with that yearly pay raise being in January, and them getting promoted to E4 coincided in the same month. So they're going to get a double pay raise here. So this person actually goes, right, they get the yearly pay raise from Congress on January 1st, plus they get this promotion pay raise. So they get two pay raises, and that's why they have this big jump in $600 almost, while this person only gets the congressional pay raise because they're not moving up a rank. So they're only getting about a $300 pay raise. And that is where this balances out again, because they are both now the same rank and they have both been in the Air Force for 3 years. It does not matter that they were in E4 longer because the pay charts do not work like that. The pay charts simply go based on how long you have been in the Air Force and what your rank is. So somebody that has been in the Air Force for 3 years and is an E4 will get paid the same amount of money as any other E4 that has been in the Air Force for 3 years. It does not matter how long that person has been an E4. And then for the remainder of the 4 years, both of these situations, they will be an E4, so they will remain the same rank, so therefore they will remain getting the same amount of pay with no pay difference. So this totals out to $2,288 that a 6-year contract is worth more than a 4-year contract when you're joining as an E2. Now that comes out to a yearly total of $572 over those 4 years, which is about $48 more a month that the 6-year enlistee will make over the person that signed a 4-year contract. Now for the 4-year totals of base pay income that each of these are going to make, the 4-year enlistee is going to make $148,903, and the 6-year enlistee is going to make $151,191. This averages out for the annual pay to around $37,000 for both situations. Now, I know what you're thinking. You might scoff at this and be like, $37,000 is not a lot of money, especially for a full-time job. Totally understandable. However, remember, your housing is completely covered in this situation. You either having housing provided for, or you're given BAH to then pay for housing. This is not adding in the cost of housing. This also does not factor in that your food is entirely paid for. If you are a single airman at basic training and technical training, your food is completely covered. And if you're married, after you get out of technical training, you'll then get BAS to pay for food. And if you're single, you will continue to live in the dorms at your first base and you will eat at the dining facility for free. Those two things alone add in about $15,000 to $20,000 of value. So realistically, you're not looking at $37,000 in annual pay, because a civilian would have to get their full paycheck, then turn around and pay for food and housing. And in this situation, they aren't giving you the money for your food and housing because they're giving you the food and housing. So if you add that in, that already pushes this to over $50,000. And we haven't even talked about getting healthcare for free. I cannot emphasize enough. I have been in the military. I did it for 6 years. I've been out of the military for 6 years. I have friends and family that have never been in the military. They have only lived the civilian life. I can tell you that it is much better in the military when it comes to healthcare. The same issues that military members have with the healthcare system in the military, the same stuff exists on the civilian side, but people are paying tens of thousands of dollars a year to deal with those issues. In the military, you have to deal with those same issues, but it's free. So that's another, right, 10,000 some dollars. So you're looking at already coming into an entry level position and you're averaging around $60,000, the equivalent of a civilian job. If you're 18, 19 years old with no college degree, no work experience, and you're going to get paid over the next 4 years to average $60,000 of income equivalent to a civilian job, that's some pretty good pay. So at the end of the day, if you're going to look at these two contracts, should you sign a 4 or a 6-year contract if you're joining as an E2? Well, there's some other factors that come into this other than just this number. I mean, if you're doing it just to get the early promotion, again, look at this. At the 4-year mark, you're crossing the finish line at the same rank. So yes, you did earn early promotion earlier in the career, but it's not that significant. And this amount of money, I mean, I'm not going to scoff at $2,288. That's a good amount of money. If you set that in an investment account and let that build money over time and work for you, like, that's better than not having it. And there's also some other factors here as well. For instance, this person, if this job offers a reenlistment bonus for somebody that has 4 years of experience and is an E4, they could get this enlistment bonus while the person that signed a 6-year contract is still locked under contract for another 2 years. So that could potentially make up for that $2,000 right there. But there is also another scenario where the person that signed the 6-year contract, because of the early promotion E4, could get a chance to test for E5 sooner than the person that signed a 4-year contract. However, in this situation, if both people are joining in January, the 6-year enlistee is going to be promoted to E4 for in July, and therefore that means that they missed the cutoff to test that year. So they are going to have to wait until the next year to test in May and June, which this person right here, the 4-year enlistee, in this scenario, joining in January, they made the cutoff because the cutoff is February 1st. So they sewed on E4 the month before the cutoff. So therefore, they are also going to test in the same time frame as the person that signed a 6-year contract. So there are some factors. I'm going to make a whole separate video on getting below the zone and some other stuff because there are some additional factors on top of this and, you know, what months you join. So I'm going to make a whole another video deep diving into like what months when you join and how that affects things, and then getting PGZ and how that affects your additional promotions throughout your career. But realistically, you're only going to be able to get ahead of people by 1 year when it comes down to promotions. Like in the long run, like over a 20-year career, you're really only looking at maybe 1 year advancement with the 6-year enlistment. And sometimes you're not even going to get that long term. You're just going to get that front loaded right here in this. So at the end of the day, is the 6-year enlistment worth it? I mean, you have to decide. I'm not going to tell people that $2,288 isn't a good thing, but sometimes, you know, having options to choose to stay in or get out at your 4-year mark might be offer a little more flexibility for some people, and they're going to prioritize that. So at the end of the day, you have to decide what's best for you, but this is what it equates to is $2,288 is the total financial difference between signing a 4 and a 6-year contract if you're joining the Air Force as an E-2. So now that you know that you're going to make over $140,000 over the first 4 years of your contract in base pay alone, let's talk about how to build wealth in the military, which is more relevant now than ever. With the 2025 government shutdown, service members had to go weeks without pay and hope for back pay once Congress passed a spending bill. During that time, they had to live off of their emergency savings. And unfortunately, a lot of service members have not prepared themselves for a situation like this. And that's exactly what I wrote the book for. It's to teach you how to use your time before, during, and after the military to set yourself up for financial success. Because you need to be using the time when you do have guaranteed pay to prepare yourself for the times when you don't have guaranteed pay. Because let's be honest, life is messy and it will not wait for anybody to get their finances in order. It will just happen. For me personally, last year was actually the most amount of money I've ever made in a single year. This year is actually the least amount of money I've made since I joined the Air Force in 2013. But because I was able to go from $15,000 in debt when I initially joined the Air Force to a net worth of over 6 figures 6 years later, and then I continued to use that momentum to save and invest, especially when I had really good years, I've been able to set myself up to thrive even on a year when I'm not making a lot of money. This year alone, I have gone to school full-time at ASU. I moved from Nevada to Iowa. I went on a family cruise. I ran a half marathon. I finished my first triathlon. I've traveled to play in 4 hockey tournaments, and I've gone on at least a dozen other week-long trips. And I'm not even joking with you. I am going to be on a plane in 72 hours going to Italy. If you would have asked me 6 months ago if I'd be running 14 miles and finishing at the Coliseum, I'd have told you there's no absolute way that's possible. But here I am. This year has been wild. And that's what financial independence gives you. It gives you freedom. It gives you peace of mind. And most importantly, it gives you options. Money should be a tool that you wield strategically. It shouldn't be something that stresses you out your entire life. And that's exactly what I teach you to master in the book. This is the most impactful resource that Airman Vision offers, because no matter if you do 4 years or 20 years, heck, even if you don't even join the military, the information in this book is still useful. So I sincerely want to thank any of you that are still watching this video to this point. And so I want to offer you a 50% discount. You can use Italy as the discount code to get 50% off for the book when you check out. Now, if you found this video helpful, the best thing that you can do is just click the like button. It will help other people find this video, and also subscribe if you're interested in more content preparing you for the Air Force. And if you're interested, feel free to share this with anybody in your delayed entry program or anyone else that you know is joining. But as always, my name is Kyle Gott, and this is Airman Vision, where we're bridging the gap between future recruits and the Air Force, and we look forward to helping you in another video.